Hi, I'm Michelle with the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum. We're here to do a little sewing for our community quilt project. I'm going to start with my conductive thread. This is the thread that's going to connect our LED lights together. It's gray and a little twisted. So just cut a little length, usually about 16 to 18 inches will work. You're going to need some scissors, so please be careful. Kids, grab an adult. Adults, help your kids. Cut a little bit of your thread. Your needle is a very tiny little needle. One end is very pointy, so please be careful. The other end has the eye. The eye is what we're going to thread through. To help get your thread through, you want to just dampen the tip of your thread. Use your finger, get a little water. Get a little water. Put it on the thread and just kind of move your fingers together and pull it to a point. And then very carefully, you're going to push the needle through the eye until you've got a couple of inches on the other side. So you can see here I have two ends. I'm going to hold it up against the dark fabric there so you can see. I've got my tail and the long end. That is the threading. You want to also tie a knot. Make sure when you are not using your needle, it is someplace safe, because when you drop a needle, they get lost easily. So if you have a magnet, I have a magnet here. You can use a refrigerator magnet. You can use a pin cushion if you're a sewer. You can pop it into your thread or your felt to hold it off. To keep it safe, I'm going to put it on my little magnet here. So make your loop, bring the end of your thread through, and pull. Don't go fast at this point. Once you've practiced a few times, you'll speed up. You're gonna pull it nice and tight till you have your knot. And you can go over your knot a couple of times. That's fine. That'll make it a little bigger to pull through. Okay, and that is threading, or knotting and threading the needle. So there are a couple of stitches we're going to go over that'll help you put your quilt together. We're going to start with the running stitch, and I'm going to show you how to go from the top of your quilt square to your first positive connection on your LED. So to start your running stitch, you need to take a threaded needle and have your thread knotted at the end. So to do the running stitch, we're going to leave our tail. So I tied a couple of extra knots, a little length, about 3-4 inches down from the end. And that's just going to give me a stop when I pull the needle through. So start on the back side of your fabric. Okay. Push your needle through. Be very careful that you don't poke yourself with the needle. So that you poked up from the back side. Now you're going to poke back down through the front. Okay, poke your needle all the way through. I'm going to take my thimble off so you guys can see. And you're going to pull your needle through and pull your thread through. Okay, leave your tail, but you want to make sure your thread is flat. Okay, your next stitch, you're going to do a short length away from the last one. You want to keep everything as even as possible. So the length of your stitch, you'll want to do the length of your spacing. Everybody can pick a different spacing. You can do it teeny tiny, you can do it bigger. Just be aware of how much thread you have. Okay, and then up and down, up and down. So I've picked out 5 spots where I want to put my LED lights. So I am going to sew right up to the spot where I want to put my light, which is actually going to be this dot right here. I'm going to go up from the back and stop right there. So now we have a running stitch, and I'm holding it right there. I'm going to set my needle down someplace safe on my magnet, and then I'm going to get my LED lights. Now I'm going to switch stitches. We're now going to do a whip stitch around the LED light. So I've already got it started. So I'm going to push the needle through the very tiny hole. I gotta make sure I'm on a positive. Okay. Now very carefully hold your LED light to the fabric on the front and the back. So I'm holding it with my thumb on top. I'm actually supporting it on the back. And then you're going to go up and down in a loop. Be very careful not to poke yourself during this stitch. It's very easy to poke yourself. So I'm going to go back down, but I'm going to go on, I came up through the circle, the hole on the LED. I'm going to go back down, but on the other side, on the outside of the LED. Down. And now come back up. This is the tricky part where you got to kind of feel around. You're going to kind of feel with the needle till you find the hole again. Come back up. Pull it, but don't pull too hard because you don't want to rip through. But pull it where it's flat. You don't have any extra looping. And you want to do this no more than 5 times. These LED lights have a very, very small hole. And if you go more than 5, your needle and your thread won't be able to pass through. So I'm going to do a few stitches here. So now we've attached the top side of my LED. I am going to do a running stitch to my next LED, and then I am going to tie it off. Okay. Be aware of where your positive and negative again as you stitch. So I want my light to be here, so I want to make sure I don't stitch down because we don't want to cross our wires at all. So I'm going to come back up from the back side because that last stitch was there. And I'm going to do my running stitch again. So up and down in a length. And again, I'm doing a large stitch so you guys can see it. You are welcome to do a smaller stitch. I'm going to set my needle on my magnet to be safe while I get my next LED. And just like before, make sure you have the positive end because that's the end we're working on in this moment. I'm going to go up through the back. Pull it nice and steady. Hold your LED between your thumb and forefinger, nice and safe, away from the point of the needle. And then back down doing the whip stitch again. So I did a few extra stitches on that one. So we have a running stitch, a whip stitch, a running stitch, and a whip stitch. Now I'm going to end this series of stitches right now. So I'm going to turn my fabric over, and then you can see the back here. Now to catch your ending knot here, this is what we're going to do. You want to go by a nearby stitch. So I'm going to pick this one over here. It's nice and long. You can work on some of the smaller ones. It's going to be a little difficult, so I'd recommend finding a bigger one. Don't poke all the way through the fabric. You can catch some of the fibers, but don't go all the way back to the front. And you're going to make a loop, just like what we did in the beginning to tie a knot. But this time we have a needle on it. So we're going to make our loop, and we're going to take the needle with the thread, pull it through, get our knot. So there's my knot forming, and then pull it tight. Now with the conductive thread, you don't want a lot of extra tail when you end a thread, except for at the top where your positives are and the bottom where your negatives are. So I'm going to trim this off. You might need to check out our other videos on basic circuits and troubleshooting. We also have a video on some helpful hints and what not to do. So thank you for joining us.